Nisanka said, I have finally figured out what I might like to try for a niche. Not sure how to articulate it or take it from there. Okay, well, Nisanka, tell us what you've got.
Okay, so for 3 years, I have been trying a very expensive hobby, which called business. So I've tried so many things: anxiety, depression, trauma, etc., parenting, and it all led me to one thing, that is to help parents who co-parent with narcissistic parents.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's there. If anyone was wondering what does a real tight niche for online sound like, that's a home run. That nails it.
Oh my God, I've had so much doubt about it because of how do I tell a story? I don't want to tell too much of personal stories, although every single research and study I have read so far is like a deep journaling of my own life story, basically.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of stories to tell, whether it's the culture, whether it's the religion, whether it's the parents, whether it's the relatives, boss, but I don't want to tell too much of stories because that will mean me going through some of the stuff over and over again. Here's what I have figured out. I'm not very good at articulating social media posts like other people I have observed do. But I do have a way of saying that is through poetry and short stories. So how do I incorporate this? How do I establish my homepage? How do I take it from there, basically?
Well, I mean, I might just say so now you do coaching as well?
Coaching, I do EFT matrices. That means trauma work as well as coaching, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's interesting. So first of all, it's interesting. So at the early on in the call, Mady was saying, well, I do trauma therapy. And I was like, well, what could an online niche be? And so this is an example of what that can look like. This very specific kind of trauma from the specific situation. It's great. Well, I would say, first of all, I wouldn't give up on yourself on social media too soon. Sometimes we can put ourselves under a spell where it's like, I'm no good at that. And I would just always insert the word yet, or like so far, so that we don't put ourselves under this permanent spell of like, oh, I'm just no good at that. You haven't found out a way to do it yet so far, but you might be amazed at what comes. Sometimes you just try something else. In the point of view, you have access to my point of view marketing workbook in the membership, just under the courses and ebooks, which reminds me, I got to talk about that right after Nisanka, we'll go into that. But there's a workbook which has, I don't know, 70 or so questions around point of view. You could literally take each of those questions and just turn that into a post. Just answer the question. Right, so that's one thing you can do. And it's simple little prompts like, the biggest myth around this issue that I hear that I'm sick of hearing is this. The biggest bullshit in the industry is, and you just say the truth. You just speak it. But the other way to do it is every day, take 5 minutes and just think, is there a story I could share from the last 24 hours of something that happened? This could be from a coaching session with a client. This could be an interaction you had on the street. It could be something you at a store. It could be something you read in the news, and you just share that story. But then with it, you share your point of view. It's like, I just heard this thing about this church, and this church leader who, I would just say from all the evidence is a raging narcissist. Here's the evidence. Here's what they did. Here's how they abused their power. Here's how they denied. Here's how they, and
would love to. I'd never be able to go back to Sri Lanka, but yeah, I'll try.
I hear you. But these are some of the consequences. Yeah, you start speaking out. Let's not kid ourselves that there aren't consequences to starting to share some of these things. But yeah, to whatever extent you're comfortable, you just start sharing stories and some mix of answering point of view questions and just sharing stories and examples of things that you've seen. I find the best for me is after coaching sessions. Like, it's one of my favorite kinds of video to do is the puttering session case study. You know, it's like, oh, I just talked with somebody and here's sort of what came up, you know, and make it broad, you know, general enough that it's not tied to anyone in particular. But there's just so many lessons that come, or I come up with an exercise off the cuff during a call. I'm like, oh, that was great. I should do that more. I should do a video about that. So just for everybody, if you're really stymied on social media content, just make it part of your practice that every time you do a session, after the session, take a few minutes to write down, you know, what did you learn? Is there a video that could come from this, or a post that I could write? Almost always there is. Almost always. Sometimes it'll really jump out at you. Sometimes you got to sit with it for a minute, but it's almost always there. And then that's endless content. I mean, I could show you my list of videos to make. It's, I don't know, probably 200 or 300 videos. I just keep coming up with ideas. I mean, even just this morning, talking with Rebecca Van Dam and talking with her during the meeting, I had a couple ideas for videos. But this is the most important thing. When people get stymied around social media, here's what's usually happening is they kind of think, oh, I got to post on social media. So they take out their phone and like, I should post something real smart and insightful and provocative. And they try to come up with it in the moment. And that never works. Yeah. So instead, what I'd recommend is everything I just said, but also have something on your phone or in your journal, a page where you just write down ideas when they come to you. Make sure you have a capture system, a place to put them. Because once you've got it down, you know, it's then they're there. And then you don't feel like you're facing the blank page or just the screen and staring into your reflection in the phone and just like, what am I going to say in this video? I don't know. I got nothing. Versus, right, I remembered I wanted to do a video about this. And then you just record it and do it. And if you do those three things, I don't think you'll struggle so much. And then part of, let's say this was on Instagram, part of it is you do poems too. Say, hey, I got a poem about this, or I wrote a little short story about narcissism, and you know, and you could release it if it's short enough. You could just do it in one thing, but you could also do like part 1, part 2, part 3, you know, and release one a day and just start to share those stories. And this is part of the beauty is if you do it where you say, no, I really like poems and short stories, and you start putting them out, your ideal clients will by definition be the ones who are like, I love your short stories and poems. That's such a beautiful way to talk about this kind of painful content. Thank you. And then the people who don't like short stories and poems, then they won't want to work with you. Yeah. You know? Did I tell you, by the way, Nisanka, why the narcissist crossed the road?
No.
Oh, they thought it was a boundary.
It's really funny. Can I borrow that joke, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
There you go. You can use that as a social media post. Easy. Yeah. You can. I mean, also, frankly, just Google narcissist jokes, and there's probably tons of hilarious content out there.
Really?
So,
Okay.
I don't know, but I know. I have no evidence for it, but I assure you that it's there.
There must be. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.